Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rachakodash, the one who speaks to the apostles and elders at Great Millstone who rule well, and if taught us is 100% truth. Much peace and blessings be unto you, hopeful, elect that the Pashanat, this word of thought, truth, and sincerity, to all you Akim, I do say Shalom. And the Akira, I'm coming in with a quick video going into this book I purchased some days ago entitled The Way of the Samurai by Inazo Nitobe, if I pronounced that right. And I presume that's an Ammonite. But you never know, he could be a Jake. But, obviously going off the, assumption, at the end of the day, we're going to operate that he is an Ammonite, right? And even if he was Jake, he's still spiritually accounted for as a heathen, as the scriptures teach. And the reason why I even picked up this book was because I was inspired by some lessons from, some years ago by the man of the Lord. I think one of the videos I watched was entitled something along the lines of "We are a spiritual Ronin," and I think the point of that lesson was to go into how we're not with the Lord, but we will be with the Lord in the kingdom, and that's because a Ronin is a samurai without a Lord. And really back then it was like a disgraceful thing, if I'm not mistaken, like a shameful thing. Right, so straw man, Ronin, they were just like mercs and whatnot, just doing their own thing, soloists. Whereas the actual legit samurai with lords above them, they were praised and famed. But that's the reason, that's why I even bought this book. And another reason is because it's conditional, as in certain things of here that's written here comply with the scriptures. Right? You have to say the whole thing is correct? No, because as the apostles always encourage, you want to separate the bones from the meat. That spirit of discernment to be able to separate what's right from wrong. Then again, it's also advice to not even deal outside of the scriptures in the case you bug out. Literally, that is in the case here. Because that would be a terrible fate. But, I've read chapter 4, and it's conditional to the scriptures. There are certain things that aren't right, and I want to read it. It's entitled Chapter 4, Courage, the Spirit of Daring and Bearing. And it's only like 2 pages, but it reads, "Courage was scarcely deemed worthy to be counted among virtues, unless it was exercised in the cause of righteousness." Now, that first clause of courage was scarcely deemed worthy to be counted among virtues automatically insinuates it's a cultural thing, for them to consider courage to be, not that great. Whereas in the scriptures, the Bible and the Apocrypha, they praise courage, man. As a matter of fact, being on the KJVA app, there are 69 results as to that word courage. But as I'm looking through the precepts, they're either discourage and courage, or just courage in general. And I'm going to pull out some precepts going into courage being a good thing. Right, and it's a good thing because it's commanded. If it's a commandment, it's good. It's brought to you by the Lord, and the Lord is good. Joshua 1:6, be strong and of a good courage. Right. Verse 7, only be thought strong and very courageous, that thou mayest have to do according to all the law, which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. Verse 9, have not commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage, be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy power is with thee whithersoever thou goest. Alright, verse 18, at the end of the verse it reads, only be strong and of a good courage. So on and so forth. There are plenty of precepts, man. Right. Going into courage. Psalms 31:24, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart, all ye that hope in the Lord. And that term courage does mean, in the quick Google definition, the ability to do something that frightens one. Right? And there are plenty of things. Well, look, another definition is strength in the face of pain or grief. Right? And there are many things on this earth, in this place of judgment under the sun, and with us being in this flesh, that does scare us. But the scriptures advise courage, bravery. Continuing on to the book, though, it doth read, courage was scarcely deemed worthy to be counted among virtues unless it was exercised in the cause of righteousness. And that's the key word, righteousness. Unless it was exercised, unless courage was done right for righteousness' sake. Well, therefore, now it's conditional. Now it agrees with the scriptures that courage in a righteous sense, which is what the Lord always emphasized, is good. It is counted worthy. An example that comes to mind are the Lord's prophets. All right. And look at Yahweh Shai, the Lord and Savior himself. He was of a good courage, and he feared dying. And that's a true fact. I just made the mention now, there are things being in this flesh that scares us. Yahweh Shai was scared of dying. And that's proven in, the New Testament, in the Gospels, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Book was bear with me. Matthew, the 26th chapter, verse 39. And he went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, and this is the red letter, so see how should I speaking? Oh, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. And he cometh unto the disciples, and findeth them asleep, and saith unto Peter, what could ye not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Now, that verse is important. Because again, what's it called? And that goes back to, what we're talking about. What's it called? Being in this flesh, you're going to be scared to things, even though the spirit really isn't scared. Like, I remember watching one of the Lord's prophets, right? one of the men of the Lord. He made the mention now. You could be talking about, I don't care, what's it called? I'll face martyrdom like a man. But then they made the mention now. But if you were actually in that moment, about to die, you'd be scared. And that's why, what's it called? You're supposed to have courage, keep that bravery. And why Yahweh Shai is mentioned, the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak, only stands out more. Right? There's a spirit for, no, it's like it. There's a verse for everything. That's what the other Apostle Gabar stated. Right? So anything you could think about, it's already, done thought about. The Old Testament, New Testament, and the Apocrypha. He went away again the second time and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, because I drink it, thy will be done. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy, and he left them and went up. Man, I wish I was agitated, dude. Agitated, not irritated, agitated. That's the flesh acting up. But he tried to keep his composure for sure. And went away again and prayed the third time. Third time's the charm, right? Saying the same words. Then cometh he to his disciples and saith unto them, sleep on now and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Now, I remember watching one of the, what's it called, Men of the Lord. They made the mention now, hey, we're all sinners. But there's a slight distinction with that, because, when Yahweh Shai sat with, the sinners and publicans, those would be, what's it called, the future believers. But then you got, true sinners, those true wicked people that stay in iniquity, that stay in sin, right? So there's a distinction. When he made the mention, is betrayed into the hands of sinners, he was referring to the wicked, right? And let yours truly, Judas Iscariot. Arise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me. And while he yet spake, lo, Judas, one of the 12, came and with him a great multitude with swords and staves from the chief priests and others of the people. God damn, dude. Swords and staves, dude. Hell nah, dude. Never would I ever think of doing that myself. Hell nah, dude. I can't even think about it. Hell nah. Swords and staves. coming in with a great multitude, dude, to take Yahushai. Now he that betrayed him gave him a sign, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, that same as he, hold him fast. And forthwith he came to Yahushua and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. Kissed him, dude. You know, I can't even read more of this, dude. You know, what's it called? You know, we gotta eat the whole roll, though. You know, we gotta eat the whole roll. You know. Damn. And Yahushua said unto him, Friend, wherefore art thou come? Then came they and laid his hands on Yahushua and took him. Damn. Okay. You know, and the good part about what's it called, enduring, you know, being of courageous spirit and enduring what he had to go through, is that now Yahushua sits at the right hand of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh. Is that not written of? I presume it was Revelation 4 or 5. It is so, and I shall bring it out. Yeah, it was the 5th chapter. Okay. Bear with me. Revelation 5:1, and I saw on the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within and on the backside sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, Who is worthy to open the book and the little seals thereof? And no man in heaven, nor on earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither will look thereon. And I wept much because there was no man found worthy to open the book and to read the book, neither to look thereon. And one of the elders said unto me, Weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof. Who do you think that's talking about, dude? Who do you think that is talking about? Or we just happened to read about him. His name is Yahushua. He is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, right? You know, you go back to Matthew 1, the genealogy, you know, tell you, strictly he was, what's it called, came out the loins of Judah, or the tribe of Judah, and out the loins of Joseph, you know, thus breaking that immaculate conception, really to deception, because Joseph was a biological father, but spiritually Yahweh was his father. You know, there was no virgin pregnancy. You know, that's impossible. You can't be a virgin and be pregnant, you know, like in Star Wars with the Force impregnating, you know, Anakin's mother. That's not how it works, dude. What's it called? That would also go against anything and everything Yahweh Bash stands for, right? That would make him a hypocrite and a liar. He is none of those things. And that would make him adulterous, but again, that would make him he's none of those things. He is not adulterous. And what's it called? Besides, you know, all the women on the earth are really his daughters, dude. Anytime after Ezekiel 8, I believe it was 18, what's it called? Makes the mention now, the soul, as the soul of the Son, so the soul of the Father is mine. Those spirits I send, they shall die. So if really we're all the Lord, what does that mean? All the women, all the women's spirits, all the female spirits, they're the Lord. You know, those are his daughters. And you go back to what's it called, Leviticus, you know, you read about what's it called, you cannot, you know, cover the nakedness of thy daughter. You know, as in, you cannot lay with her. That's incestuous and that's wicked. It's an abomination. Therefore, you know, it will be abominable for the Lord to do so. He's not going to do that. He is not going to, you know, be abominable. You know? Anyways, I digress back. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb, as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of power sent forth into all the earth. Now we know what's it called, that lamb, as it had been slain. It is still talking about Yahushua, you know, that's talking about him getting crucified. And he was a lamb because, again, he was sinless. He was perfect without blemish. You know, no iniquity in him. He was the only man in existence to have never sinned in the flesh. Only man, you know, true facts. So when you think about people who have the worst death ever. Yeah, people get all subjective. Supposedly subjective. People are talking about, oh, this guy so and so. He ended up blowing up in an explosion. Oh, this guy, what's it called? He got mutilated. No, the worst death ever in existence was a death of a man who didn't deserve it in that lifetime. Though we know what's it called, you have to die for the iniquities at Solomon. That's for another breakdown though. But you get the gist of it. That's the worst death ever. Also, he's the second in command. He is the only begotten son of Yahweh. So best believe it's going to be a terrible thing to kill the Lord himself. Anyways, so that's the worst death ever, point blank period. And the kingdom that's going to be understood, that's the worst death ever. You think my deaths in the past lives, count for anything? No, they're really lousy. All our deaths are nothing compared to Yahweh's death. Now, anyways, going back. Courage was scarcely deemed worthy to be counted among virtues unless it was exercised in the cause of righteousness. Right, that agrees with the scriptures. In his Analects, Confucius defines courage by explaining, as often as wont, what its negative is. Perceiving what is right, he says, and doing it not argues lack of courage. Right. Put this epigram into a positive statement, and it runs: courage is doing what is right. That's another point in courage, and when you meditate on that, perceiving what is right and doing it not argue lack of courage. Well, take this for example, religion. The most basic definition is that it's a belief system. But as the other Apostle Gabar taught, in a lesson years ago, I think it was in his Daily Edification 2 or 3 channel. Now I just uploaded before, but the previous channels I got taken down. one of those. He made the mention now. Religion is a form of servitude, and that's true, because what is religion? What's it called? Well, first of all, what the Yahweh Shai say? If you let me keep my commandments, right? So if you truly believe in something, you're gonna do what's commanded of you, and if you believe in something and you do what's commanded of you daily, that becomes a way of life. That becomes a form of servitude. Then it is no wonder as to why the Apostle Paul referred to himself as a servant of Yahweh Shai, which when you read different translations, it does make the mention a slave for Yahweh Shai. Therefore, we are slaves for Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Right? Not the other way. Right? Hey, as a matter of fact, Romans the 6th chapter talks about, hey, you are no longer the servants of sin, but the servants of righteousness. I'm going to pull that out. It is an empirical fact. Empirical is a word Esau uses a lot to pertain to, physical data. Empirical. Based on, concerned with, or verifiable by observation or experience rather than theory or pure logic. Well, what's it called? Our system is the scriptures. All right, so I'm gonna pull out, some empirical data, and that means I'm gonna pull out a verse to prove that. All right, so anyways, Romans the 6th chapter. Okay. Romans the 6th chapter, verse. 16. Know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, as servants ye are to whom you obey, whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness? And yes, sin unto death, because we know the wages of sin is death. It's in the same chapter. Also, what's it called? Sin unto sin leads to death. I think that was James the 1st chapter. I digress. It makes to mention how, for obedience and righteousness. Now we know, as the other apostle around taught, what's it called? Following the ways of righteousness leads to life. Which makes makes sense, because if sin leads to death, wouldn't righteousness lead to life? Hell yeah. That's also one reason why in those spiritual bodies that are sinless, we're not gonna die. We're gonna be immortal, because there's not gonna be a reason to die. Right? Not like in this lifetime where anything, can happen. What's it called? This roof could collapse on you right now. As in, that does not happen. Hopefully not. It's a terrible thing. But it could happen, it could be, what's it called, freaking Earth opens up right now and swallows us whole or whatever. It's happened, right? I think it was Cora that got that, right? Was it? Was that? I forget, I'm gonna fact check that, pull out that quick precept. Okay, yeah, it was Cora, number 16 and 32. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their horses and all the men that pertained unto Korah and all their goods. Right? Yeah, because Korah was rebelling, going against, what's it called? This was a punishment for challenging the authority of Moses and Aaron. Yeah, he was going against the Lord. The Lord's command, which was established Moses as the lead. That's why, what's it called? Miriam, Moses' sister, she had leprosy, and she had to, what's it called? Separate herself from the camp, for, what's it called, amount of days. Has to be clean again. all because she was rebelling, and not only that, but she's a woman, a weaker vessel, dude, and the man's supposed to be the lead, right? So she was going off at two things, her younger brother, really, yeah, her younger brother, being established, and what's it called? You look at it that way. What's it called? He's a man and she's a woman, and that's the thing. It's supposed to be a patriarchal system, and not a gynocracy. If I'm mistaken, that's the right term, pertaining to the rule of women. And even if Esau be ruling on this, the man be ruling on this side, they're also, what's it called, influenced by a lot of females. And also he be putting up the woman on the pedestal, so they're on top of the man, right? That's why when you look at, what's it called, songs, and this morning I was watching the Vivo channel, that would, however you pronounce it, listening to music while cleaning. You had some Edomite chick, some singer, and a terrible song, by the way, no salt, but at the end of the song, you're seeing her, what's it called, kill her boyfriend in the song, right? Now, say the roles were reversed, it was a male artist, doing that. Now that's gonna be a problem, but see, there's double standards. What's it called? You see how that is because Esau put the woman, on top. I digress, though. Going back to the verse, Romans 6. What was that? Yeah. Verse 17, but Yahweh be thanked that you were the servants of sin, but you have obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine which was delivered. You being then made free from sin, you became the servants of righteousness. The servants of righteousness, dude. How about that? Meaning we have to keep the law. And what's it called? Going out the second Maccabees, you have those brothers, they all got slew. All because they ain't want to eat no pork. You know how courageous that gotta be. That's literal war, dude. Literal war being written in the scriptures, dude. Right? And yet they didn't flinch. They didn't renounce the Lord. They didn't talk about, save my life. What's it called? I'll be a servant of sin. No, there's none of that. I'll be a servant of righteousness, dude. I'm not trying to be unclean. Just slay me, dude. I'll come back again. And that's true. They came back again. And they came back again. They could be in the spirit realm right now, or they could be on this side again. Those are bold moves. Those are righteous things, righteous ordeals. Yahweh Shai, the scriptures, read, he is not forgetful. He's not forgetful of their works, and he will compensate them. That's been taught. That's been literally mentioned. I read that. Right, I'm gonna pull that out. Okay. This is the book of Hebrews, the 6th chapter, verse 10. For Yahweh is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love. And they show the labor of love, which ye have showed toward his name, and that ye have ministered to the saints and new minister. What's it called? Continuing on to the book, the Way of the Samurai. It reads, perceiving what is right, he says, and doing it not, argues like a courage. See, so what those brothers did was a courageous thing. You know, they did what was right. They did what was right, dude. And they shall be compensated more so in the kingdom, dude. More so in the kingdom, when all these feats will be the they are the canon, will be the mainstream. How about that? How about that? People out here glazing and what's it called? Talking about Star Wars lore and whatnot. You know, Resident Evil lore. Oh my God, Leon S. Kennedy, Chris Redfield. Oh, they're them. Oh, what's it called? What about? There's gonna come a time. You know, I prophesy this because it's written of the scriptures. What's it called? We're basically, you know, prophesying the same thing that's written in the scriptures. Right? Declaring the end from the beginning, as the Lord states. Well, how about this? What's it called? I prophesy, what's it called? That the men of the Lord, they're going to be, you know, famous as hell, dude. You know, praise, dude. No more shall it be said, oh my God, you know, what's it called? SpongeBob is him. Oh, no more shall be said, oh, Leon S. Kennedy is him. Oh, yeah, what's it called? He's so cool and whatnot. Whatever the hell people be talking about. And, oh, my God, what's it called? Jim Carrey, you know, James Bond, freaking, you know, all the John Wick. Oh, my God, it's so good. No. The only feats that will be emphasized in the kingdom are the feats of the men of the Lord. People are gonna know about the mighty men again. You know, people don't know about the mighty men except for, you know, some so-called Christians and the Achim, right? But there's gonna come a time when the whole world will know about the mighty men. They're gonna know about what's it called, the prophets. They're gonna know about the brothers that died. Well, they're gonna know about what's it called, Stephen. You know, getting stoned. They're gonna know about all that stuff. And it all starts out with Yahushua's great death. And they're going to know about the Apostle Paul's, you know, beheading on behalf of, you know, Emperor Nero. They're going to be like, oh my God, those men are the men. How about that? How about that? How about that? How about that? See, Sirach, dude. I'm going to pull it out. Let us now praise famous men, dude. How about, oh my gosh, dude. I don't know, dude. I'm feeling emotions. Good emotions. Ecclesiasticus, a.k.a. Sirach, the 44th chapter, verse 1. Let us not praise famous men and our fathers that be at us. Let us rock great glory by them through his great power from the beginning. And what's it called? So on and so forth. People gonna know King Masha. They're gonna know him. They're gonna know what's it called? Elder High Priest Yahweh, Elder High Priest Shar, so on and so forth. Those are the men of the Lord. You know. Continue on. Yeah, because they did what was commanded of them. They did right. That's the. You're basically doing a solid. And that's all it was about. You know, doing a solid. You know, you do this for me, I'll do this for you. Anyways, put this epigram in a positive statement and it runs courage is doing what is right. That's right. Continuing on reads. To run all kinds of hazards, to jeopardize oneself, to rush into the jaws of death. These are too often identified with valor. And in the profession of arms, such rashness of conduct, what Shakespeare calls valor and Miss Bigot, is unjustly applauded. Now, let me tell y'all something. If I remember correctly, one of the men of the Lord made the mention, just is a synonym of righteousness. Therefore, meaning unjust, like that root word or suffix, I'm not sure, means not just, is wicked. That's a synonym, wickedness, right? Unjustly applauded. It is wickedly applauded. And, you know, the precept that comes to mind is, Isaiah the 5th chapter, if I'm mistaken, makes a mention, now what's it called? I'm gonna pull that out. You know, I don't want to roughly paraphrase. I don't want to butcher it. You know, butchering, that's no place for me, dude. Ain't no place for me butchering the precepts. Anyways, all right. Isaiah 5:20, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that pour darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. So basically the backwards is the opposite, complete opposite. You know, people out here associating courage with what's it called, and valor with, you know, to run all kinds of hazards to jeopardize oneself, to rush into the jaws of death. This is really rash. Wait, what is rashness of conduct? I'll search that up. Rashness of conduct meaning the act of behaving, deciding, or acting hastily without due consideration for the consequences, risks, or potential dangers involved. All right, is unjustly applauded, but not so in the precept of knighthood. So, in layman's, associating courage and valor with basically, running into the thick of battle. What's it called? In the chaos. That's a no-go. That's a no-no. And that's also scriptural. So therefore that's this book being conditional to the scriptures, because the scriptures teach us to not be reckless. It tells us, what's it called? What's what I'm looking for? Be circumspect. Right. That means circumspect meaning what's it called? Being wary of taking risks. Because a lot of those risks will lead you to going off. Right. Exodus 23 and 13, and in all things I have said unto you, be circumspect. Ephesians 5:15, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. Right? Tobit 4 and 14, be circumspect, my son, in all things thou doest, and be wise in all thy conversations. Right. So that in the scriptures, being to not be circumspect is not the same as courage. But this book is saying that it's identified with valor, and that's associated with courage. To not be circumspect, meaning to be foolish and run into the thick of battle, into the midst of chaos. But that's not in the scriptures. The scriptures basically state to not be circumspect is not to be courageous, but to be circumspect is to be courageous, right? And the book goes on, but for now, the precept that comes to mind is the prudent forsaketh the evil and hideth himself, right? The prudent meaning wise, right? The prudent forsaketh the evil and not and not runs to what's it called, trouble. No, he hides himself. Right? So I'm gonna continue on the book. It reads, to run into the thick of battle. Death for a cause unworthy of dying for was called a dog's death. To rush into the thick dog's death, that's a good term. Rush into the thick of battle and to be slain in it, says a prince of Middo, is easy enough, and the merest the is equal to the task. But he continues, it is true courage to live when it is right to live and to die only when it is right to die. Right. Now ultimately it's all brought to you by the will of the Lord. Everything, there's no free will, the scriptures teach, right? As another Lord teach. It's all brought to you by the will by the Lord. All right, the ways of man of the Lord. How can then man understand his ways? Also, Proverbs 21 and 1, going to the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. Therefore, there's no free will. It's all brought to you by the Lord. And also, time out the 1 Samuel, the second chapter, and that's his mom speaking. Hannah is on talking about how the Lord killeth and maketh alive. He bringeth out to the grave and bringeth up. So the Lord gives and takes. At the end of the day, we know that death, a person dying is brought to you by the Lord. Again, what's it called? The soul that sinneth shall die. But when it reads, he continues, it is true courage to live when it is right to live, and to die only when it is right to die. It's also it falls under the illusion of choice, which the men of the Lord have spoken about, because there is no free will. But then again, we have the option, the illusion, the illusory, that's the proper word, option to choose. Say, somebody offers you, a pick from a batch of donuts, chocolate, what's it called, so on and so forth. They're like, I don't like this one, I don't like that, I want this one. You think, what's it called, you were able to independently, freely choose. You think you have the autonomy to do so, but no. The Lord had you do that. The Lord probably wanted, what's it called, so and so forth to get the cinnamon one. What's it called? So he was like, I'm gonna make this guy think that he doesn't want anything, and think he wants to get this one. I'm gonna have him like it, so he's gonna have the chocolate one. That's how the Lord be operating, dude. What's it called? But yeah, what's it called? Going back to when Miss mentioned choosing want to live and want to die. Again, what's it called? It's the pretense that you being prudent, you get to what's it called? Have the option to hide yourself instead of running the thick of battle. If you know something's gonna go off, you have the option. You could continue. What's it called? You could hide yourself. Avoid any chaos, and avoid possibly dying, or you could do the opposite and end up dying or whatever. Right. So at the end of the day, it's all illusory. It's all an illusion, though. And yet the Prince of Mido had not even heard the name Plato, who defines courage as a knowledge of things that a man should fear and that he should not fear. Right? That also go back. That's also conditional to the scriptures. Wait, what? Defines courage is not the knowledge of things that a man should fear and that he should not fear. Yeah, because what's it called? We're taught to not fear man, but we're taught to fear the Lord. So that's also a conditional example, right? And the fear of the Lord is not only what's it called a literal fear, though it can also be that. It expands. Right? The fear of the Lord is someone that's open. The fear of the Lord, this is the fear of the Lord, as written in the book of Proverbs. Continuing on. A distinction which is made in the West between moral and physical courage has long been recognized among us. What samurai youth has not heard of great valor and the valor of a villain? Valor, fortitude, bravery, fearlessness, courage being the qualities of soul which appeal most easily to juvenile minds and which can be trained by exercising example, or to display the most popular virtues early emulated among the youth. Stories of military exploits are repeated almost before boys left their mother's breasts, and so on and so forth. If I remember correctly, reading all this is just going to like a Spartan system, though this one exactly Sparta, because it's really encompassing multiple civilizations, who all had like a Spartan-like system. Those, Sparta was like that true system because, they had the, I forget what you call it, but you would basically strip a child 6 years old and, put them, testing the limits to see, how worthy they are, being a warrior, because it was a warrior civilization, warrior society. I'm gonna jump down though to, because the chapter starts at 51. I'm gonna jump down to 53. The spiritual aspect of valor is evidenced by composure, calm presence of mind, tranquility, its courage and repose. Right? It is a statical manifestation of valor as daring deeds or dynamical. A truly brave man is ever serene. He is never taken by surprise. Nothing ruffles the equanimity of his spirit. I'm not sure what that means. I'll search it up later. In the heat of battle, he remains cool. In the midst of catastrophes, he keeps level his head. Earthquakes do not shake him. This reminds me of. It reminds me of what one of the men of the Lord taught. You want to be. That's what he said. He said, the men of the Lord will be calm and collected. Will be cool as cucumbers or something like that. I forget how he said it. Pointed something like that. He worded it like that, something like that. Basically, the men of the Lord will be of a calm mind. Why? Because they have the Lord. They have the Lord. Hey, wisdom and knowledge should be the stability of high times. Henceforth, there'll be no any attack. Dance. Leave that to the people. Leave that to what's it called? The non-life, man. They out here, what's it called? Tripping, freaking out, flipping out. What if they don't have the name of the Lord? They're not gonna pray. They're not gonna know what to do. Rise, people of the Lord. The Lord's light. They're gonna be calling upon His name, and from there on out, it's a cruise, dude. Turbulent waters. Now, praying the Lord. Just a calm ride. Calm and collected. Cruising, right? It's like you're on a ferry. Right? It's like you're on a speedboat, but the water's so calm, it's not shaking, and you're not going. Basically, in layman's terms, you're just normal. You're just basic, right? You're operating on the basic sense, operating normally. In the thick of all that chaos, when shit hits the fan, you're gonna act normal. Oh look, what's it called? People getting slew. Oh look, martial law. Oh look, this and that and the third. You name it, dude. You're like, oh look, oh that's cool. Birth pains. You know what I mean? Earthquakes do not shake him. He laughs at storms. We admire him as truly great, who, in the menacing presence of danger or death, retains the self-possession, who, for instance, can oppose a poem under impending peril or humbly strain in the face of death. Such indulgence betrays no tremor in the writing or in the voice is taken as an infallible index of a large nature, of what we call a capacious mind, yoyu, which, far from being pressed or crowded, has always room for something more. Basically, what's the picture that comes to mind with that is Job, the 5th chapter, if I am not mistaken. Job. Yep. Exactly as I suspected. Job, the 5th chapter, verse 19. He shall deliver thee in 6 troubles. Yea, and who's that he? Yahweh. Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai. Yea, in 7 there shall no evil touch thee, which we know 7 pertains to that and not be thermonuclear fire destruction, right? You know, because 7 is a complete number. You know, we're talking about all the plagues on the earth. We all know that end all be all is that fire. I mean, scriptures literally teach, what's it called in second Ezra 15, I believe it was verse 3. It doth emphasize what the hell we talking about. What's it called? It makes the mention verse 5. Behold, saith the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. What do you mean by destruction? You know, what's it called? I thought the sword, what's it called, also brought destruction, because what's it called? You know, the sword pertain to, you know, like weapons. You know, they were basically weapons. And, you know, certain precepts, the sword and bow and arrow are interchangeable for the missiles. It still means missile. But what's it called? It's emphasized more so at the last word. Sword, famine, death, and destruction. Right? Because what's it called? Thermonuclear missiles, they do massive damage. They had a high blast radius, dude. Right, what's it called? Time after Isaiah, it was 54 verse 16, makes it mention now, I created the waster to destroy. You know, back then I used to think that word waster meant waster. I've created the waster to destroy. No, it means waster. You know, to lay waste. When you lay waste to something, you're basically causing the area to be rubbly destroyed, you know, ruined. Be the ruin. When you see destruction, you see ruin. I mean, look at the Battle of the Bulge. Like, post-World War II, a lot of European, cities that had all of these wondrous, you know, buildings that went out glamorous, you know, elegant buildings, architectural, you know, nice structure, whatever. A lot of that was done away with because all the artillery and all the bombings. Well, there's going to be that final destruction, you know, very soon. You know, we at the forefront of this World War III, you know, we're just waiting for that declaration. You know, we're just waiting for that declaration, you know, from Congress. And, you know, we out, boy, we out, dude. It makes the mention now, in Job, the 5th chapter, how time back. We'll go back to Job, right? Yeah, in 7 there shall no evil touch thee. Right, yeah, because what do you mean by touch thee? You know, the fire's not gonna touch you, boy. I remember I had a dream. What is it called? The Big Cherry. I'm about to redo a lesson on that. I did a lesson on that. That dream is like that dream is the most vivid I've ever had of all dreams. And I got to redo it. Basically, the Yahweh Shai ship pulled up, and then it covered the sky. And at the distance, you see a thermonuclear fire that's running to me, and I get beamed up. Anyways, in famine he shall redeem thee from death, and in war from the power of the sword. Yeah, what's it called? Hey, my servant shall eat, my servant shall drink. How about that? And famine basically means a lack of food. Right, you done know about famines. I mean, 2020 was an example of famine. And in war from the power of the sword. Yeah, that means what's it called? You're not gonna get drafted. The war. How about man? Which I about this? I did not get drafted, dude. What's it called? We don't want to get drafted because one of the words that stick to me is one of the words that one of the prophets spoke of, talking about when you go to the Middle East, we ain't never coming back. You know, now those words scarred me, dude. That's freaking terrible, dude. A terrifying thing. And it's no wonder then as to why Isaiah 3 will stand out in the latter verses talking about the woman being desolate, because you go, you watch these interviews and whatnot. Some dude's interviewing some woman, she's like, I got a boyfriend. That's a common trope, that's a common proverb. But very soon it's gonna come to the point where they're not gonna be talking about, I have a boyfriend, dude. You're like, I need a man. And that's why Isaiah 4:1 is gonna be so emphasized. 7 meaning, many. It could be a little number 7, that's like in the Lord could roll like that. Or it could be like freaking 20, dude, for crying out loud. It could be like 3, we don't know. But it's not the sex that counts, it's survival. That's the whole point. You're not gonna be thinking about sex. Oh my God, like all this box. No, you're gonna be thinking about what's it called, survival. Like, man, these chicks need a man. Well, and the spirit's gonna choose. The spirit, you're gonna have like it's gonna be like one of those like booths, like kissing booths or whatever. You're gonna have like a line of women pulling out, talking about some, please take me, and there's gonna be the spirit of the Lord, picking next, skip, left, right. I want you, skip. I want you, skip, right? That's an example of how it's gonna be. I'm not saying that's not what it's gonna be, but I mean it could be to the point where that's exactly how it ends up being, for one of the men. But it's just an example. It's an exaggerated example. Because there's gonna be women, a lot of women pulling up, wanting you, and why? Because there's gonna be a lack of men. What's it called? It's a common understanding that men go out first to war. Though Congress, if they do need, extra bodies, they will, alter it to where women end up being cooked as well, and they get, drafted. The prophets at GMS, right, the Akim, those great men of the Lord have spoken about those things too. Yeah, even independent women, they're gonna get drafted to war, right? But if you elect, they're gonna be cool, And what's it called? And it's no wonder as to why. What's it called? We're talking about. They shall make them as a finer than gold, right? Finer than gold. I believe that was in the 16th chapter. 46 minutes. Feels like freaking like 10 minutes, dude. What the heck? All right, 2nd Ezra, the 16th chapter. Verse 73. They shall be known. Then shall they be known who are my chosen, and they shall be tried as a gold in the fire. And what's it called? We know if we know anything about economics, dude. If we know anything about economics, dude. What's it called? A low quantity leads to high demand. A low quantity leads to high demand. A low quantity of men. Women outnumber men in general. So now it's gonna be lesser, man. What do with that? You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah. I'm gonna go back to Job, the 5th chapter. So yeah, what's it called? Women are gonna bring up to us. 5th chapter, verse 20. Yeah, and in war from the power of the sword. All right, so preserve from that. Thou shalt be hid from the scourge of the tongue. Neither shalt thou be afraid of the destruction when it cometh. What is it? What does? All right, tell me. What does an earthquake do? What does an earthquake do? Huh? An earthquake destroys, dude. It's a form of destruction, a natural disaster, a natural destruction thing. Going back to the Way of the Samurai book, earthquakes do not shake him. He laughs at storms. What does the Bible say, dude? What does the KJV in the book of Job, the 5th chapter, verse 21 state? Neither shalt thou be afraid of destruction when it cometh. At destruction, verse 22, at destruction and famine, thou shalt laugh. Neither shalt thou be afraid of the beasts of the earth. Hey, you think a mountain lion scares me? I don't know, dude. What's it called? You got David. David as a young kid, a young lad. He slew a lion, dude. And a bear. And also Samson pulled up and he slew a lion that came out the way. You can't tell me you're going to be flipping that one. You be praying Yahweh outside for protection, dude. Just see a mountain lion pull up. Just pray. That mountain lion would acknowledge you and dip. Hey, Daniel was in a den of lions, dude. Now, sure, Esau tries to disprove of what's it called, the Medes taking over, and what's it called, that being a fictional story and whatnot. It's not fictional. Esau's just a freaking liar. That's the whole point. Time out the Revelation 20. Time out what's it called? Esau deceived the nations, and he did so, dude. He deceived Jake to the point where they think what's it called. A lot of them think that the Bible's a fairy tale. And they use the Book of Daniel as an example. Oh, well, the Book of Daniel is fictional. It has no place. Yeah, it does have a place in history, dude. What's it called? Continuing on, verse 23. For thou shalt be in league with the stones in the field, and the beasts of the field shall be at peace with thee. Right? You know, what's it called? The mountain lion pull up out the way. They're gonna look at you like, oh, what's up? And they're gonna run away. Hey, Leviathan, buddy. Leviathan, baby. You should think, dude, Leviathan's a great freaking, you know, scary ocean creature finna pull up. You think he's gonna stomp on the metal board? Hell no. He's gonna acknowledge them. Oh, look. Oh, yeah, that's one of the men of the Lord. Hey, what's up? What's up, brother? What's up, Ak? Or what's up, Lord? What's up, Lord? Oh, you know me. I'm just wreaking havoc. How about that? You know how cool that's gotta be, dude. Scary but cool. Psst, awesome, dude. Awesome sauce. Literally. I digress. And thou shalt know that the tabernacle shall be in peace, and thou shalt visit the habitation and shall not sin. And yeah. So that's the verse that comes to mind. Talking about laughing at storms, dude. Not being shaken in earthquakes. Now, obviously, literally, you're gonna be shaking, you know, earthquake, you know, rocking you back and forth, dude. But you're not gonna be shaking mentally. Like, oh, I'm unstable in all my ways. What shall I ever do? And even then, dude, you know, the earth shall rule to and fro like a drunkard when all these missiles pop. You're not gonna literally be shaken by the freaking, you know, landmass, because you're gonna be up in that chariot, you know, outside the freaking atmosphere. Has to not feel it, because even I remember it was the other one I was talking about, making the mention how even the birds are gonna feel it, dude. The birds and the fowls in the air, they're gonna feel the shaking. You know, and you got wavelengths, you got radio waves, you know, so on and so forth. You're definitely gonna have like those waves where you're gonna be feeling in the shaking of the earthquake in the air, dude. In the air. So, yeah, I just wanted to do a quick little, and yeah, the chapter ends, like in 2 paragraphs later of The Way of the Samurai, chapter 4, but the last 2 chapters, or at least the last chapter, is kind of bullcrap. You know, it goes against the scriptures talking about loving, loving your enemy. Being proud of your enemies. You think we're proud of Esau? I don't know. And even then, you think Esau, the prideful man on earth, you know, proud of Jacob? I don't know, dude. I don't know. And he's a proud dude. He ain't no proud. We're not finna be proud either. But I just want to do a quick little lesson going into the scriptures, as well as chapter 4, The Way of the Samurai, because you know it was conditional, as in there are things that comply with it, whereas others do not comply with it, do not agree. All right, but just, you know, a good book, sort of. Lord was edifying. For the next one, I'll just say shalom.